What's going on, everyone? Welcome to a Football Friday edition of Back Your Play with Q. As always, I'm your host, Rich Quinones. Check us out on the YouTube channel, Rich Q on Q, and of course, part of Broad Street South Network, 1029 The Game, and Leon Media Group. On a Friday, we're brought to you by our very good friends over at Played Against Sports. Visit them online, 1450 Clemens Bridge Road. We'll get into those guys later on, second portion of the show. They got some great sales going on with some of the merchandise. So with that being said, he's moving around. He's looking. He's probably seen if he's being investigated right now, like Michigan. That, of course, is our college football insider. The great Nick Kosko does a wonderful job for On 3 Sports at Nick Kosko 59. And this could be the weekend that sets everything in flux, chaotic. Here we go. How are you, my friend?
I'm good, Rich. It's going to be a good weekend of college football. We are in November. I know we've been teasing that coming up, but this is where it truly gets chaotic. Obviously, the college football playoff rankings are out. So now we look ahead the next couple of weeks, get into the conference championship window and eventually the postseason and the CFP, which, you don't want to boil the entire season down to the Final Four, but this is what we're gearing up for. This is why November is so exciting right now.
Yeah, and it lays out, as you mentioned, the big boys. We're kind of keeping an eye out for going forward: Ohio State, Georgia, Michigan, FSU. But let's start with a couple games that I've highlighted. We'll get into these trends and lines and predictions as well. Very good matchups that I think we have across the board this weekend. 23rd ranked Kansas State against number 7 Texas. You look at both these squads, 4-1 in the Big 12. Kansas State 6-2 ATS. When you look at the total over 8 games, 4-4. They're coming off the big win over Houston. They put up 41. I know their wide receiver Johnson is questionable. And then for Texas, you don't have a quarterback. I mean, think about it, right? So, and I know that there's been talk this week, hey, what about us? Don't forget about us. We had the best win of the season against Alabama, 34-24. Texas in this one, laying 3 with the hook, 3.5, 4-4 ATS over their last 8. And the under has only hit 2 out of the last 6. So with that being said, they put up 35 against BYU. For me, this line is telling me something where I think, again, Kansas State will be able to keep this game close. It's unfortunate that the stud quarterback at Texas will not be available because of that shoulder injury. How does that change the offensive game plan for Texas in this one?
I really don't think it changes much. Steve Sarkisian is very confident in Malik Murphy. This will be his second start now. He led him to the victory last week over BYU. So the way I look at it is it's pretty much this is what you have to deal with. And if Texas is this great team and a team that's bound to be in the Big 12 title game and play for a shot at the college football playoff, Malik Murphy has to just go about his business, play mistake-free football. And, this is kind of just, I don't want to call it hearsay, but back when Quinn Ewers transferred to Texas and he came on campus last year, he was a starter last year, and obviously he eventually got hurt again in that Alabama game at home, which Texas lost in 2022. And then he wasn't quite the same, but he obviously has really broken out this year. But there were whispers of when he came in, because he already had, I guess if you want to call it a year under his belt at Ohio State, again, that was basically a senior year of high school. People were saying that Malik Murphy was probably more game ready than Quinn Ewers, but obviously Ewers beat out everybody on the roster last year. Did so again this year. It really wasn't a fight this year. And obviously you bring in Arch Manning as a recruit this year, who's probably not going to see the field. I know Sarkisian would like to get him on the field if it makes sense, just again, those game time reps. But, Quinn Ewers won the job for a reason, but again, on the flip side, there was reason why people were so high on Malik Murphy. He was a 4-star quarterback himself. He is a guy who has all those intangibles. He's got the physical traits and the tools. Is he as good as Quinn Ewers right now? No, but I think he is more than suitable enough to give Texas a chance in this one. I mean, yeah, that may sound like I'm putting him down right now, but obviously if you don't have Quinn Ewers in there, you're not as good right now. But Malik Murphy is more than suitable to win this game for Texas. And you look at Kansas State, very scary team, I would say. They are the defending conference champions for a reason. They are somehow, some way, Rich, using this 2-quarterback system with Will Howard and Avery Johnson. Right now, Johnson was, I think it was 5 of 6 last week in the win over Houston, and he threw a touchdown while Will Howard had a pretty good game himself. So they've kind of not mastered it, but have really utilized it well, a 2-quarterback system. But again, you are going to Austin. Pressures on Kansas State, obviously, to pull off this upset if they want to get back to the Big 12 title game. But again, on the flip side of that, we're doing flip side for this entire game. Texas is firmly under pressure right here because they have to keep pace with Oklahoma. Now I know
100%.
Oklahoma Oklahoma lost to Kansas, the Jayhawks, not the Wildcats. But Texas does have that head-to-head loss to Oklahoma. And again, now that both teams have one loss, they're under the gun to say we have to win out in order to make the CFP. It's not going to totally erase their Big 12 title hopes, but it's going to put Texas in a huge bind knowing that they would have head-to-head losses to Oklahoma and now Kansas State. So basically, you're going to get left out. You're going to be on the outside looking in at this point. So if you're Texas, the impetus is on you to keep winning right here. But I think Malik Murphy is more than good enough to keep steering this ship until Quinn Ewers is back.
Yeah, it's a good point you bring up, and a nice segue. I mean, listen, again, 3.5. I'm comfortable with them at home in this one. Could be a high scoring game, but nice segue into Oklahoma State. This is a massive game now, right? Bragging rights. You got conference title implications. Oklahoma laying 6. I saw the line kind of creep down to 5.5. A lot of people are starting to jump money late on Oklahoma State plus 5.5. They both come in with very good, solid records. But to me, what do I love? What do I always preach? In the trenches. To me, this is the epitome of an in the trenches game. You look at Oklahoma State's ground attack, their rushing attack, and then you look at Oklahoma, their front 4, their front 7, the defensive line, that interior line, if you will. I think the game's going to be won and lost in the trenches. If Oklahoma State can get a sustained running game with Gordon, who's pretty much a dark horse right now, Heisman candidate, you would think, over 1,000 yards. They're top 5, 6, I think, in the country, 7, what have you, in rushing. So to me, I look at this as just a in the trenches type of game. And I don't know if I'm comfortable with Oklahoma. These are games where they're trendy games, they're sexy games. It doesn't matter about the venue, when they're playing. It's just goofiness happens in these games. And I know that over the years, Oklahoma has owned Oklahoma State, but I don't know. I think it's flipped this week. I like Oklahoma State getting 5.5, 6.
It's an interesting pick. I'm still going to lean Oklahoma in this one. I do believe the Sooners are the better football team, and I know it's you know me with these road favorites. It's just not. Yeah, it's not my cup of tea. But I do like Oklahoma in this one. But again, it is Bedlam. This is the last Bedlam for the foreseeable future. Obviously, since Oklahoma is going to the SEC and Oklahoma State's left, saying, what do you want from me here? So, Gordon, interesting pick as a dark horse for the Heisman. Obviously, if the Heisman Trophy award was no longer just a quarterback award, so it seems, maybe you would throw Gordon's name up there because he's quietly having a great season. Oklahoma State in general, Rich, is having quietly a great season right now. They're 6-2. I know they had quite a bit of a collapse last year after everyone was like, wow, at this rate, this team could be competing for the Big 12 title. If not, maybe an outside shot at the CFP, then I think they lost about 5 or 6 in a row. It was a pretty bad ending to Oklahoma State's season, if I do remember correctly, in 2022. But this team 6-2, they only have one conference loss. They're tied for first at the top of the conference with a bunch of other teams as well. So when I look at the Cowboys, especially if they're hosting this game, and it's kind of that motivation factor that you want to go out a winner in this rivalry because your rival is leaving the conference and going to the SEC. So I think Oklahoma State's a trendy pick right now. I'm going to stick with the Sooners, but you mentioned keeping it on the ground. I think that is the key. Alan Bowman's played okay for Oklahoma State this year. He's thrown 5 picks, hasn't really lit up the stat sheet in terms of his passing statistics right now, but he's a Michigan transfer. He found a home here in Stillwater. So I think that with the way he's playing this year, you can't rely on him in that passing game. You have to kind of go through Gordon, control the clock, keep the ball out of Dylan Gabriel's hands on the side of Oklahoma. But we've seen it for Oklahoma this year. I know the last 2 games for the Sooners, Rich, have been a struggle fest to beat UCF, and then obviously the upset loss to Kansas. But that offense runs through Dylan Gabriel, and if he's on, I mean that team could score a lot of points. And obviously the defense has been molded a little bit, and it's more so in Brent Venables' image. So it's a much tougher team. But I could see why Oklahoma State's a trendy pick right now. But I would still have to opt for the Sooners this weekend.
Fair enough. That's a 3:30 kickoff. ABC. Let's go to the SEC. A battle of again. Look, we know one of them's a juggernaut, but one's trying to upset the apple cart. Number 12, Mizzou taking on number 2, Georgia. Georgia, obviously 8-0, 5-0 in conference play. They're laying 15.5. They're averaging about 25 points per victory. albeit 7 of the 8 against unranked. When they beat Kentucky at the time, they were 20, no longer ranked. And then you got Mizzou, who played them really tough in 2022. They were 29.5-point dogs in that one, lost 26-22. I still think Georgia defensively, I don't buy or subscribe too much into, 7 of 8 unranked. I mean, Mizzou's a different animal. I understand that. But to me, Georgia just both lines of scrimmage, I think they're too tough. I don't know if they're going to cover this game, but I see them clearly winning this game.
Yeah, I'd say so too. So you look at the way Georgia operates this year, nothing flashy, right? Everyone's saying, well, their strength of schedule is down, and it is. Don't get me wrong, not a great strength of schedule, but with the way they play this year, if you excuse the dog barking in the background there. So you look at Georgia right now. I like the way they're playing, Rich, because it seems like everyone's going, well, Ohio State has that big strength of schedule right now. And obviously Michigan is the talked about team in the top 4, but then people want the new blood in there. Georgia's really under the radar in the sense of they're starting to peak a little bit. Now, I'm not at their top peak right now, but they're starting to say, we've had some close calls this year, but we dominated Kentucky. Now, forget about Kentucky. I know that they've dropped, they were 5-0 and they dropped to 5-3, but you look at the way they're playing now. Carson Beck's getting more comfortable in that system as the starting quarterback. He's no Stetson Bennett, who's won 2 national titles, but he's getting more comfortable. The run game is there. The defense is always suffocating, and they're going to have NFL players across the board. So the way I look at Georgia is this is a game they should win. I would still kind of be stunned if they lost to Mizzou. I just think from a fan perspective, you want to see Mizzou win this game for a pure chaos perspective, because Mizzou, while they have a conference loss,
tiebreaker,
but they would have the tiebreaker over Georgia now, and it's at that point where you go, all right, if you're Georgia, you're going to need Mizzou to lose 2 more games,
right? At
that point, or one more SEC game, I should say. But also you have the again, they'll have the tiebreaker over them. So Mizzou is weird in the sense that they play Georgia really close regardless. But this is in Athens. If this was at Mizzou, Rich, I would say I might take Mizzou for a bit of an upset here as a home dog. But they're going to Athens. I think it's going to be too much. 3:30 kickoff, national spotlight. I like Georgia right now. I think the Tigers will keep this closer than that spread indicates. So I might be inclined from a betting perspective to say I'll take the plus 15.5. It's a large spread. I don't think Georgia's going to kill them, because I don't think that's what Georgia does this year. I think that they're just playing their best football this year, but they're not that dominant force that they were over the last 2 years. So I do like Georgia in this one, but if I'm going to shift somewhere, I might say, maybe take Mizzou plus 15.5. But ultimately, I think Georgia's still going to win this football game.
Yeah, and this might have the makings of a high-scoring game. You look at Mizzou in that red zone offense against Georgia scoring defense. That could be the difference. You can't go down there and kick field goals if you're Mizzou. You have to get 7 pretty much every drive that you're in the red zone. It'll probably go back and forth. And you think
right,
about
no freebies. Yeah. You can't. It could be one of those situations where, let's just say Mizzou has the ball first, right? And they go down the field or on the road. If you have a 4th and goal from inside the 5-yard line, I'd say if you're Eli Drinkwitz, you say, Brady, go back onto the field, Brady Cook, the quarterback, and 100%. Just throw it in there. Go for the touchdown. Let's shut down this home crowd on the opening drive. Absolutely.
Even when they get into situations where, as Coughlin, you say the green zone, the red zone, if you will, 30 and in, if it's 4th and short, you can let this kid move around out of the pocket and make plays with his legs. We already saw what he can do with his arms, around 2,300 passing yards, including a couple 300-yard games as well. All right, again, Football Friday edition of BYP. Kosko joining us. Rich Quinones here. Oregon State against Colorado. The only reason we bring it up is because the buzz with Colorado, 3-0, then they dropped to 1-2 in their last 3. The offense, bad loss to Stanford, only 16 against UCLA. But I was looking at the numbers, and you tell me what you think about this one. You look at Shedeur Sanders, his numbers, 22 touchdowns, just 3 picks. And if you go back, one was trying to make a play, and the other 2 really kind of pressured, if you will.
Right.
He's been sacked 16 times in his last 3 games, 7 last week. But Oregon State, they don't really get a ton of pressure up front. I think Gordon, their defensive lineman, has 3.5 sacks. I think this might be a game where if they can't get to Sanders, then Colorado is going to be able to move the football in this game. Now, am I going to sit here and say they're going to win this game? No, because I kind of think they've come back down to reality. But the line is 13
That's a lot. That's a
that,
lot.
yeah. If you go by what I just said, the rationale, like this can potentially be a 24, 21, 27, 20 type of game. I think both teams will move the ball, but I
So you
think
want to hammer the under in this game then?
I do.
Okay. The way I mean, your rationale makes sense, and as we've kind of talked about over the last few weeks, when you see Colorado come back down to earth, the defense is not there. They're last in a lot of metrics. The offense is pretty much one-dimensional because their leading rusher, Dylan Edwards, who's a good freshman running back, but I think he has less than 300 yards this season. He's their leading rusher. And if you're Shedeur Sanders, you're basically doing this. You're doing this all by yourself because the offensive line is shaky, as we've seen against the bigger opponents. And I think this team's a little shell-shocked when they lost to Stanford in overtime and blew that lead. Now, the game against UCLA the other week, now, was that game there for the taking? Sure, but the problem is UCLA is a more complete and a better football team, so you can always understand the loss, even though it was I would say, a quote-unquote winnable game. Mm-hmm. But losing to Stanford was inexcusable, so that's the big difference between them being 5-3 compared to 4-4 right now. Now, is this a game where at home they're big home dogs against a top 20 team? Is there a chance for an upset? I'd say so. They're always going to be, as long as Shedeur Sanders has a clean pocket, that offense is going to have an opportunity to score a lot of points. The problem is he's been sacked 41 times in 8 games. Now, I'm no math major, but that's not a good average. That's about 5 times a game. Yeah, that's about 5 times a game on average. That's not a recipe for
but
success.
You think Oregon State has a better defense than UCLA?
No, I don't think that. So that's why I think the impetus is on Colorado's offensive line to keep him clean. Now, is that going to mean they're going to be able to run the football as well on Saturday? We'll see, because no matter who they've played this year, there really has been no running game. And I think Dylan Edwards' best game this year was the opener against TCU when he caught 3 long passes out of the backfield. So the way I look at that is, if Shedeur Sanders has a clean pocket, this team could put up between 28 and 35 points on this defense. Okay. Is that going to give them the win? I don't know. Because, I mean, again, DJ Uyunglele has had a more of a revival type of year after transferring from Clemson in Jonathan Smith's system at Oregon State. Oregon State's a good team for a reason. I think Oregon State is going to win this game, but I mean, it's hard for me to turn away from Colorado plus 13 at home, especially going up against one. I don't want to call them one of the weaker defenses, but not one of the more talented defenses that we've seen in the Pac-12, like an Oregon or like a UCLA. Again, I know USC's defense is obviously low in the metrics as well, but we saw what Colorado was able to do against USC in a shootout. So, and I would say Oregon State is not as talented as USC on the offensive side of the football. So, is there a chance for an upset here? And then all of a sudden, the last 3 games, Deion only needs one more win to get bowl eligible, even though he doesn't care about bowl eligibility. Yes, I can't. I want to. I really want to. I want to pick them outright, but I can't. I will take Colorado plus 13 here if I'm laying a couple shekels.
62.5.
It's a big number. That is a big number. I'll give you that. But I feel like 10 o'clock on the East Coast, little Pac-12 after dark, Rich. I think
I'll be calling craziness in PA, and then when I come home, I'm counting sheep right away. So, you got real quick. Give me 30. Rutgers 6-2 against Ohio State. The line is ridiculous. 19 points. Ohio State.
That is actually smaller than it has been. Rutgers has never been within 21 points of this team. 9 straight meetings since they joined the Big Ten.
That's a nice 0-9.
0-9 against Ohio State. Never have they ever been within 21 points once the final score. I think the closest game was a 49-27 game in 2020. That was the closest game they've ever played against Ohio State. Otherwise, Ohio State regularly puts up over 40, if not 50 points, and Rutgers can barely score over 14. So is this day different? I don't know. It's the 12 noon nationally televised CBS window. I mean, come on, Rich. This could be pandemonium in Piscataway too.
No, it will not be.
No, I'm just kidding. It will not be. That'd be crazy. And then I think I think the rest of the Big Ten is going to, I think, just jump off a cliff if Ohio State loses this game. Is that, guess what that means? Michigan's your front runner by far once again to repeat in the conference and get to the college football playoff. But I do think Rutgers has a chance to be competitive in this game. What does that look like? I think you got to lose by no more than 14. Make this a physical game. Keep Ohio State's offense within check. There's a chance. There's a different buzz about Schiano's team this year with the Scarlet Knights. They're already bowl eligible. And I would say out of their last 4 games, I mean, they have Ohio State, Iowa, Penn State, and Maryland. Can they go? The best case scenario to me, I've seen from around social media and talking to Rutgers fans and other people, 2-2. You finish 8-4. Would that be best case scenario? Maybe there's a chance for that. So maybe wins over Iowa and Maryland. Maybe put a scare into Ohio State or Penn State. Just be competitive. I think that's what fans want to see against, especially this team, because they've never been competitive against Ohio State. They've been competitive against Penn State despite never beating them. They've beaten Michigan before and have been competitive. They've beaten up on Michigan State before. They've beaten Maryland. Obviously beaten Indiana, but the one team out of the entire conference they've played since they've came to the Big Ten, Rutgers has never been competitive against Ohio State. So if you put on a great showing in front of a sold-out crowd on Saturday afternoon, I think it's a moral victory in itself. Even though Greg Schiano will say, we came here to win, but that line's pretty big. I would say that's probably about what it's going to be. Maybe a late touchdown, but I would expect a more competitive game, especially if they come out swinging in that first quarter.
Yeah, this will be the plucking in Piscataway. This is a 40-13 type of game.
It very well could be, and I won't even bat an eye because that is to be expected against the Ohio State Buckeyes. By the way, the last time Rutgers did host a number one overall team was Ohio State. I believe it was 2015. So we're talking about 8 years ago. So not Rutgers' first rodeo hosting the top team in the country, but obviously that didn't pan out. I actually believe, quick story, I was still in college at that point. It might have only been 7-0 or 7-7 at one point before JT Barrett decided to say, hey, I need to start playing football. But I think the opening drive, JT Barrett goes down the field, like at the Rutgers 30, 35-yard line. He fumbles the football, and all of a sudden, Rutgers starts marching down the field, and then sure enough, the wheels come off anyway. But there was a small little buzz for Chris Fowler and Kirk Herbstreit to say, ooh, we have something brewing here.
Yeah, 30 seconds worth.
30 seconds. It was a fine 30 seconds, I will say. Which, by the way, I went over my allotted time on Rutgers today, so that was about 3 minutes too long.
I was going to say your 30 seconds, you stretch in like a couple TV timeouts in there. All right, which leaves us with about a minute or so. The Michigan issue, here's my only thought on everything. And I had Brandon Bell on. We were talking a former Penn State linebacker standout. And he said, listen, a lot of this is probably self-inflicted, but it's almost become a joke right now. At the end of the day, all these coaches around college football that want to have the pitchforks at Harbaugh. And if you cheat it, you cheat it. I get it. There's ways to have that competitive edge, but put a face, put a name to what you're saying. Like, there's my problem. The anonymous crap actually come out. If you're going to bark, that's visible. We can see you. Come, because again, at the end of the day, what are the repercussions? There's no repercussions because it's almost as though Harbaugh is probably in his mind saying, enough of this crap. I'm angling out. If I win a national championship, see ya. Now there's the conflicting reports, whether they pulled the contract off the table or not. But ultimately, if you're going to punish them, you're going to punish them. But for some of these coaches to keep coming out anonymous, say what's on your mind if this is so troubling to you and so annoying to you.
Right. That's why I do have to give a little bit of credit to Purdue head coach Ryan Walters, who did say on his coach's show that apparently they do. I mean, allegedly, Purdue does have evidence and video evidence of this going on. Yeah. Ryan Walters at least said something. But then again, they are playing Michigan on Saturday. So was that just to get everyone riled up, or was that planned? Would he have said that knowing if they were not playing this weekend? I don't know. I don't want to put words into his mouth, but I do give him a little bit of credit for at least saying something out loud, rather than you hear all the reports about all the Big Ten coaches and all the ADs meeting with Commissioner Tony Petitti over Zoom and like on their weekly call, and how all the coaches are irate, how some of the ADs are irate, and apparently Michigan State AD Alan Haller is above and beyond pissed compared to other people, because he said, well, they rushed to judgment during that tunnel incident last year where there was if you remember the videos that came out, the fights, the swinging helmets, the punches thrown. You're comparing apples to oranges here. And that's why I don't like the comparisons of, well, the Big Ten did this, the NCAA did that, compared to the situation. There's an ongoing investigation with Michigan right now. Now, I'm not going to give Desmond Howard all the credit in the world for saying this, considering he is a Michigan alum, so this could come off as bias, but he said, why is there a rush to judgment on this? Why are people clamoring for unprecedented action against Jim Harbaugh and the program when the investigation's ongoing? They say they have concrete evidence, but that concrete evidence has yet to come to the floor in an official capacity. The one guy that's at the center of the investigation, that Connor Stallions, who's again a low-level staffer, he's already suspended. I get he's suspended with pay, but he's not involved right now. And whatever scheme they've had going on for the whole year, for the past 3 years even, I got to imagine it's been put to a halt at this point amid the investigation. Whether Harbaugh knew about it or not, I think is beside the point right now because nothing has been concluded. There's no conclusive
Correct.
evidence yet. There's nobody has come to a conclusion yet. The NCAA has not wrapped up their investigation. And if you're the Big Ten, you have it's a bit of a double-edged sword. You're not going, maybe on one hand, you want to punish them to say, we don't want this to happen in the future. Okay. But then the cynical side of you says there's a lot of money involved in here.
Of course.
What you look at what's better for your Big Ten. I mean, again, everyone's probably everybody and their mother that does not like Michigan right now is probably rooting for Ohio State to represent the Big Ten as its champion, as a team in the college football playoff. But if it's not Ohio State, what bigger brand from a money perspective is going to give you more exposure and better for your league than putting Michigan as your Big Ten champion once again, going back to the playoff and nothing against Ohio State. What would be a bigger deal in the grand scheme of things of college football, just science stealing aside, Ohio State winning a national title or Michigan winning a national title? It's Michigan. And
Yep.
Jim Harbaugh is the most polarizing head coach right now, I would say. And he's going to flirt with this. I could totally see a Pete Carroll 2.0 where maybe they run the table, they go 15-0, they win the title, and then he goes off to the NFL, he leaves Michigan, or better yet, Rich, he gets a contract extension on top of a national title. He's suspended for half the season next year based on this. I'm just throwing out a hypothetical punishment. And he says, all right, up yours. I just got a contract extension. I'm not going anywhere. What are you going to do? I won my title. I'm staying here. I'm good.
Yeah, leverage is an amazing thing. I think the whole thing, like you said, they're waiting for the other shoe to drop, and Michigan has somehow stubbed their toe. I don't potentially see it happening,
right?
But
and I've never seen anything that would actually get wrapped up this fast. You know what I mean? This is I can't see anything happening in terms of an actual punishment until this is done. And if the Big Ten does decide to jump the gun before any type of NCAA investigation is concluded, or say if the Big Ten launches their own investigation and they do something before the conclusion of it, I can only imagine there's going to be a lot of backlash on that decision. And because you're doing something in the middle of the season, I mean, is this, again, I'm not going to go as far as to call it a witch hunt like we were kind of discussing last week, but if the Big Ten, like what's the goal here? What's the end game here in terms of a punishment? To keep Michigan out of your conference title game, to keep Michigan out of the college football playoff? CFP is an independent organization unto itself. That's not happening. It's not. Again, goes back to the money issue. Too much money is involved. You think the CFP is really going to keep Michigan out of its Final Four based on allegations and an ongoing investigation? Mm-hmm. When in the grand scheme of things, compared to other incidents, and I go back to that Michigan State thing from last year, the tunnel incident, there was a clear-cut brawl on video. You have to suspend those players. You have clear-cut evidence of those guys swinging their helmets and throwing punches.
Right in front of you.
Did they rush to judgment? Maybe, but the clear-cut evidence. We don't have clear-cut evidence of this yet, other than this guy bought a bunch of tickets.
And the sunglasses at night. So there you go. He, of course, is Nick Kosko at Nick Kosko 59. College sports. Great song, On Three Sports.
It's a good one.
I mean, seriously, you got to start rolling in with that, right? And
that's right.
Of course,
maybe he'll get some kind of endorsement deal for that as a coach.
Anything, right? We'll show.
Whatever works. You know what I mean?
Cal Live Sports as well. Yeah, playoffs.
Yes, we do. So on this, as we record this on Friday, November 3rd, 6 p.m. tonight on Cape Atlantic Live, Colts Neck comes down to Linwood, take on Mainland. South Jersey Group 4 sectional semifinals, a spot in the sectional final on the line against the winner of Millville and Shawnee also tonight as well. So catch that on Cape Atlantic Live. I got the call as usual. So it could be our last broadcast of the year. So we'll see how the rest of the playoffs shake out.
All right. And as I mentioned, don't forget to follow Nick at Nick Kosko 59 at On Three Sports, and of course at Cal_Live Sports as well. Catch them tonight. Kickoff 6, as you mentioned, playoffs, Cape Atlantic League. So heats up a little bit. All right, my friend. Enjoy the games. 40-13, Plucking and Piscataway. You'll get the text while I'm on the road around 3:30.
Maybe 35-14. Can you give me 35-14?
Man, that's fine. I'll give you that. I'll give you that.
Okay, that sounds good.
Always appreciate a couple moments. Thanks for jumping on BYP. We'll do it again next week, pal.
Appreciate you, Rich.